Welcome back to the Rum Ration, the podcast dedicated to celebrating the extraordinary courage and selfless camaraderie of combatants across history. I'm Colin.
And I'm Rejoy. And as two former infantry officers, Colin and I know that the human element, that dedication to the person next to you, is truly what defines a fighting force. It's like getting on the subway in the TTC at the moment.
Hopefully not getting stabbed.
Hopefully not, or pushed over. Anyway, we love... Exactly. We love bringing those stories to life, especially those moments where, ordinary folks faced impossible odds and achieved the extraordinary. And, before we dive into this episode, Colin, maybe we should mention that we are re-recording it because we had originally tried to do it from the RCMI where we were in December and had such a wonderful time recording some episodes there.
Perhaps too wonderful?
Perhaps too wonderful. But during that point, initially, we were, just before this episode, we had 99 subscribers on our YouTube channel, if you remember correctly.
Yes,
and then one person subscribed and put us over the top. And while we don't really like dropping names, do we, Colin?
No. I mean, you were making allusions that number 99 was probably, well, Wayne Gretzky, obviously, the great one. He would wait until it was number 9. He would wait, yeah.
He would. But the person who put us over the top, I mean, again, we don't like name dropping, but just happens to be somebody named Emma Watson. Draw your own conclusions.
Exactly. Emma, thank you. Welcome to the community. We appreciate having you on, and it's a great thing. And Rejoy mentioned ordinary folks. I think we've been accused oftentimes of being ordinary. Although I'm trying to be festive here. I've got my little hat on for Christmas. This was originally supposed to be released on Christmas Day, but the audio was so bad. We are re-recording, and it will come out on New Year's Day as opposed to Christmas Day. So, yeah. And the selflessness that Rejoy was talking about, it really often shines brightest throughout the holidays, and that was when soldiers are farthest from home and their families. And today we're marking Christmas with one of the most famous and perhaps the bloodiest episodes, hard to believe, so many of them, in Canadian military history, the Battle of Ortona in 1943.
Indeed, Colin, that was a really, really horrific tale to tell. I mean, when I first read about it, and that was way back when I was a teenager, it was just shocking, the brutality of that battle, because this story isn't your typical festive tale. No. This is a story of a Christmas dinner earned through a week of brutal room-to-room fighting, where the ultimate sacrifice was measured in city blocks and narrow hallways. We're going to trace how the Canadian forces, the Red Patch Devils, as they were known, battled Hitler's elite Green Devils. Red and green. Very festive, much like your hat.
Very festive, much like my hat. And because of the seriousness of this topic, I am going to take off that jester hat. I don't think that's quite giving the homage to what we were looking to the soldiers who fought there. But our goal for this special Christmas Day episode, well, we have two goals. The first goal we've missed because that was to release it on Christmas Day. But the other goal was to understand the context of the Italian campaign. It's something that's often overlooked and derided as the D-Day Dodgers and all that good stuff. Yes. And how this terrible battle began, the complications that defined the fighting, the remarkable change that occurred on Christmas Day, and the lasting consequence of what was known as Bloody December in the, quote, Italian Stalingrad.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but before we get too far into the story, we want to provide context and get slightly out of what we've been accused. Well, we accuse ourselves of our strong infantry bias.
Who was?
Yeah, I know.
I know. Very sorry. I don't understand that.
I don't understand.
Very unfair. Very
Last
unfair.
year for Christmas, we told the story of the famous 1914 truce between the Germans and the British, who took a break from killing each other in the trenches. And this year we'll be telling you about the Canadians, who also took a slight pause in their cheerful killing of Germans in Ortona. But I don't think they could hardly be accused of slacking and taking a truce. There was no truce.
Yeah, but it depends on which RSM you ask about the slacking part of it. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Different viewpoints, but I agree with you completely. You're quite right.
But it's always easy to feel sorry for the poor bloody infantry, and the examples, of course, are endless. But we can't forget what Christmas was like for the other services.
No, exactly right, because it was a grim period,
absolutely,
regardless, no matter where you were, which front you were fighting on. So Ted Paxton's convoy memoir describes a mid-Atlantic convoy escorted by Canadian corvettes, where on Christmas Day, 1943, the convoy altered course to avoid a known U-boat concentration.
Mm.
And these are stories that people forget. The Atlantic War and the
Mm-hmm.
convoys, and the fact that the Royal Canadian Navy played such a huge role in combating that menace.
We'll have to
Um,
get the Admiral back on.
we will have definitely get the Admiral back on to discuss that. The new route took them into the infamous Black Pit, the stretch of North Atlantic beyond land-based air cover where U-boats hunted convoys with deadly effect. It's a strong Christmas at War example from the naval side of things. No tree-lit mess deck, just bridge watches, sonar operators straining for a hint of an attack, knowing that survival, if you went overboard, was measured in minutes and not hours because of the frigid temperatures of those waters. And many times your first inkling that there was a U-boat in the area was that telltale tracking that you saw of a torpedo heading your way, and then you just had seconds.
Christmas cheer.
Indeed.
Yeah, speaking of submarines, actually, I had lunch with a submariner today. He came over. He's one of our early fans, and he brought a date, a new young lady in his life. She claimed to be a fan of the Rum Ration, but when I quizzed her to recite the back catalog of the Rum Ration episodes in reverse alphabetical order, she stumbled. She got two or three in error, and
Wow.
we promptly asked her to leave, obviously.
You had to.
We had to. It was
Can't
kind of
tolerate that
embarrassing for the
behavior.
family. Well, all kidding aside, it was nice to have my nephew Callum, who is a submariner in the Royal Canadian Navy. It was nice having him over for lunch with his girlfriend, who I won't mention any names, just in case I get in trouble now if anyone actually listens to this. But all teasing aside, it was really nice to have her. We also can't forget, the Navy's one thing, and the Army, obviously, but we can't forget our fine feathered friends, such as Flight Sergeant Jean Cauchy of Cat 25, or 425 Alouette Squadron, who the Montreal Alouettes are named after here, the Canadian Football League team, for the Royal Canadian Air Force. And he flew a Halifax bomber on a daylight bombing raid. That must be fun. Against Dusseldorf, which you lived, where you
Yes.
10 years?
15 years, just outside of Dusseldorf.
15 years, yeah.
Yes. A little town called Rottingen. Shout out to Rottingen.
He was softening up the area for you, I guess, because on the 24th of December, 1944, he's on that daylight bombing raid against a Dusseldorf airfield, and his aircraft was hit by flak. He lost an engine, and he finished the raid with a hung bomb still in the bay. And for people who don't understand what that means, it means he has a live bomb ready to go off, and when you open the door, it didn't fall. It stayed there. I think that's kind of stressful. And instead of returning to base for the long-planned Christmas concert that he was supposed to be singing in, he diverted to RAF Rivenhall to save his crew and aircraft. At least he had his priorities straight as opposed to doing the concert. But talk about a stressful Christmas.
I know, but especially, missing the concert too.
I know.
And for all the younger listeners out there, when we're talking about, things like hung bomb, it's not a TikTok thing. It's something completely different to what you may be
500 pounds
thinking.
of explosives that refuses to shake loose from your plane.
Aha. Yes.
Right on cue.
The Royal Cat Artillery has made an entrance. Newton would like to just say he takes exception with the fact that it was a 500-pound bomb. And secondly, priorities were not in the right place. He should have made it to the Christmas concert.
He should have. Yeah.
Listen
to Newton sing.
He's singing right now.
Yeah.
Singing his praises. So anyway, let's set the stage for the Battle of Ortona. By the dead of winter in 1943, the Second World War had been raging for 5 years now.
Wow.
And that's quite some time. People really don't look at it in that way. But if you're in the middle of it, you've been fighting for a hell of a long time.
Even longer if you think of, China.
Exactly.
We overlook China and the 30 million casualties in that campaign.
Yes. That's something maybe we can explore in a future episode.
Yeah.
Now, the Allied forces, including the 1st Canadian Infantry Division, had landed in Sicily in the summer and were now grinding their way up the Italian peninsula. And again, this is a military term, grinding their way up the Italian peninsula, nothing to do with TikTok.
Or any other social app.
That's right.
Social media app that Rejoy. We'll leave that alone.
That's a different podcast.
The Canadians had hoped that capturing Ortona, a small historic port town on the Adriatic coast, would wait for it, in case you've never heard this before, would be a quick affair, maybe a day or so.
We shouldn't laugh, but
Seriously, how many of our episodes we started with? It'll be over by Christmas.
Maybe that's why we're laughing.
It'll be a quick attack.
Quick jaunt.
Yeah. However, what they encountered was a strategically minor objective. It was important chiefly because it held the coastal highway 16, which was the main axis of advance for the 8th Army, who were heading up towards Pescara and Rome.
Yeah, that's right. And leading up to Ortona, the weather had been absolutely and utterly appalling.
Yeah.
December 1943 was the wettest on record.
Man.
And you know what wet cold is like?
It's the worst.
It's the worst. So the river in the area, the Moro River, had risen more than 8 feet, turning the surrounding fields into seas of mud that clung to the advancing Canadians. I'm sure memories of 1917 were hitting them in a huge way at that point. The fighting for the river and subsequent terrain features like the gully, which we'll get into later on, had already taken a massive psychological and physical toll on the division. This is all before they actually got into Ortona.
That's right. And they faced stiff, very stiff. That's the past tense of stiff. If Andy's listening, I tried out your bamboo rum.
Yes, I see that.
It's working fantastically.
We're back at the RCMI.
So the Canadian 1st Division troops, they faced a stiff resistance from the German forces, specifically 2 battalions of Hitler's elite 1st Parachute Division, the Fallschirmjäger. Yeah. Now, we know these guys as the Green Devils, and they were battle-hardened, fanatically dedicated, and commanded by a General Lieutenant, how do you say that?
Generalleutnant Richard Heydrich.
Or Lieutenant General, I guess, Richard.
Yes, pretty much.
But crucially, Hitler had ordered the town held at all costs. So, surprise, surprise. I think he must have had like a rubber stamp made up.
Hold at all costs. Hold at all costs.
Defend the last man. It's easier than actually, resupplying or sending in reinforcements, having a strategy. No.
I'm going for my vegetarian lunch now.
Yeah. But the Germans had decided they were going to use this Ortona because where it is on the flank there it was going to anchor their winter line defenses at Ortona. And of course, Hitler, ordering something to be held at all costs was entirely predictable by this stage of the war. It is really sad to think of how many lives on both sides were wasted because of that man.
And then that year, 1943, when you think about it, that was happening all over the place with his rubber stamping, hold at all costs. And the thing about Ortona, and this is also interesting because remember, December 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad pretty much wound down. And now you're having that in miniature, just because of the sheer scale of numbers, beginning to kick off in Western Europe, in Italy, because Ortona was geographically unique, giving the defenders a massive advantage. And the Germans, one thing that they excelled in was defense.
Absolutely, especially in Italy.
Especially in Italy, where the terrain favored them. It was built on a steep-sided plateau, edged by sheer cliffs and the Adriatic Sea to the east, and a deep ravine to the west. This meant the town could only be assaulted from the south along the flat approach, concentrating the German defensive strength. So the Loyal Edmonton Regiment and the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada were tasked with entering the town. So these were the 2 regiments that were told, okay, you guys are going to kick it off. You're going to head in there first.
So they're heading down Highway 16 into Ortona. On the right, well, it's the ocean, the Adriatic, right? And on the left, you've got that deep ravine that they can't get around.
Correct.
And the Germans have got time to prepare for it. Wonderful. Yeah. So the Germans, who are, of course, skilled at urban defense, have been learning a lot about it on the Eastern Front. They also had time to prepare. They turned Ortona into a fortress, predicting the Canadian approach. Well, it's not that hard of a prediction. Let me think here, Rejoy. I think they're coming up Highway 16. They deliberately destroyed key buildings, creating rubble piles, that's very clever, that blocked the narrow side streets and channeled the Canadians onto the main thoroughfare. Highway 16, also known as Corso Vittorio Emanuele, which they had heavily mined and booby-trapped. Now, classic defensive tactics. Canalize the attackers into the kill zone of your choosing, and particularly if you've got time to prepare for it,
especially
you'll be able to shape the whole ground so that the attackers have no choice but to fall into your traps.
I must say you pronounce Highway 16 with quite a flair.
Thank you.
Please say it again.
Highway 16. Not falling for that.
All right, you go. Okay. So anyway, it was a deliberate trap, right? I mean, it was really well set up, and it was meant to force frontal assaults down predictable, exposed routes, making the Canadians pay dearly for every foot of ground. I mean, this is exactly what you want to do when
Hmm.
you're defending a position. You set up your kill zones, you dig in, you've got the rubble helping you, you know where they're coming from. I mean, what could go wrong?
And why is rubble so important as opposed to the building itself?
Yeah, well, the thing with the rubble is you can dig in, you know,
Right, and it can't
and
fall down again because
and
you
it
already
can't fall
blown it
down
down.
again. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And then it gives you so many areas of cover, and you can stick your machine guns, your mortars, all sorts of weaponry throughout rubble, and mine it. Of course, that's the
Of
other
course,
thing.
and booby
So
traps and all that
booby
good stuff.
traps, so many huge natural advantages to fighting from rubble. So the battle for Ortona proper began on December 20th, 1943, 5 days before Christmas. When the Canadians advanced, supported by Sherman tanks of the Three Rivers Regiment, they immediately ran into this meticulously engineered defense.
Yeah, and the advance became challenging almost instantly because on
Mm,
December 20th, as the Loyal Eddies pushed forward towards the outskirts, one of the
yeah.
Sherman tanks was destroyed by a hidden anti-tank gun, and the remaining tanks were forced into a prepared minefield. Oops. I mean, that's
E-
precisely what the Germans had intended, right? And this
exactly.
wasn't the quick clearing operation. It'll be over in a day that they'd
Well,
expected.
I think when they saw that first Sherman brew up
Yeah.
and the rest of them get into a minefield, it was a question of, this
Hmm.
might be a little bit more difficult than we expected. And the Loyal Ladies quickly suffered the Germans' pre-battle demolitions. I mean,
Right.
everything for the Germans were going to plan. Early on December 21st, the Germans destroyed the Cattedrale San Tommaso.
And how would you like to pronounce Highway 16?
Highway 16. Your wonderful enunciation of it, I think, should set the standard.
Thank you.
Uh, so the Cattedrale San Tommaso in the old town, creating yet more rubble for their defensive plan. So again, what we were just discussing: create rubble,
Hmm.
create defensive strong points. The Canadians had to contend with machine gunners, snipers in windows, buildings packed with explosives. It's a horror story. After all, it is much easier to defend a destroyed urban area than one that's still standing.
That's
Like
right.
we said, and those buildings, well, they're now natural strong points for defense.
Yeah, they've collapsed already. They can't collapse again, right?
Nope.
And so this creates perfect hidey holes, which is a technical term. I think
Yeah.
some of our civilian listeners probably aren't
Yeah.
as familiar with that. For the defenders to disappear into, and the urban terrain and the German strategy quickly forced the Canadians to discard their conventional tactics. And by day 3, which was December 22nd, the fighting was so intense and frustrating that the attacking Canadian forces realized that they had to adapt or suffer completely unacceptable losses.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, it's December 22nd. The weather is terrible,
Raining,
raining.
just above zero.
Exactly. And again, you're just being ground down. You're back into fighting World War One style type of tactics. It must have been so depressing and frustrating. But this, Colin, this is exactly where the ingenuity of the Canadian infantry shone, demonstrating that capacity for improvisation under fire that defines the extraordinary combatant. And that's one thing the Canadians had in spades,
Mhm.
ingenuity, right? They had to literally write the book on clearing a built-up area as they went. I mean, it's no surprise that they were in the First World War known as the shock troops of the British Army.
That's right.
Uh, and then their reputation was well deserved and well earned, and they carried that through into the Second World War.
And the next point that I'm going to make here is I got to explain to my nephew today. He'd never heard of the term, which, upon reflection, I guess probably not a particularly effective naval tactic. The most significant adaptation was a revolutionary new tactic that the Canadians developed known as, quote, mouse holing, end
Yeah.
quote. So instead of risking the open, rubble choked streets, which were the killing grounds already set up and their weapons laid on them,
Yeah.
covered by enemy fire, the Canadians decided to advance through the buildings. So as opposed to going out the door,
Yeah.
exposing yourself on the street, trying to get into the next house by going through that door, they literally just blew a hole in the joining walls and then said, "Hello, Merry Christmas," threw a couple of grenades in and went through the buildings.
Yeah, that's right. And, to be fair, I can well understand if you're a submariner why that wouldn't work so well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a lack of
Yeah.
boldness, though. Have they tried it? Have they
It
tried
is.
blowing a hole
Well,
through the the deck, just to
yeah,
see?
it is the Navy. So
Resistant to change.
Resistant to change. That's right. Risk averse.
Submariners, yeah, risk averse.
So, anyway, the Canadians used Piat launchers and explosives like satchel charges to blow the hole. So that's the mouse hole.
Yeah.
They use these explosives, they create that hole. And remember, you're talking about a medieval Italian city. So those walls, the stone is so thick. If you've ever had the opportunity to travel through Italy and see some of these old buildings, in Europe, in fact, all European towns, you can well understand the thickness of the walls that separate the adjoining houses. They would then follow up by throwing grenades, in your incredible description of that, where they wished everyone a Merry Christmas before blowing them to bits, throwing the grenades and rushing through the hole, engaging the... Now, this is the really intense part of it. Then they would engage the enemy in close quarters combat, often room-to-room fighting with fists, knives, and pistols. So, you're in such confined close quarters, and for our military followers or ex-military followers have been through it, close quarter battle training, how confined those rooms can be. And in those days, they're carrying their Lee Enfield rifles. So,
That's right. Just trying to get through the hole, because they probably weren't clean, rectangles like a door. When we're doing all our training nowadays, you're kicking down an existing door. So there's a door frame, and it's easy and it's clean, as opposed to a smashed up stone and brick wall, right? And then you imagine being the German on the other side, on the welcoming committee. You've got all the dust, because if you were in a room, suddenly a hole got blown into it, and a couple of grenades got chucked through. I mean, your ears would be ringing. You wouldn't be able to see properly. There'd be dust. There'd be smoke. You wouldn't know what was up, what was down. And then some gentleman coming in to wish you Merry Christmas.
Yes. Obviously with different headgear than what you were wearing earlier on.
A little more dignified, probably.
A little more dignified.
Right.
So,
but this ingenuity gave the Canadians a massive advantage. The Germans were surprised, and they failed to adequately counter this improvised warfare. So mouse holing kept the Canadian troops under cover, reducing their exposure to snipers and machine gun fire on the streets. And it was an incredibly successful, albeit exhausting, tactic that is still used. It's a standard for urban operations today.
Yeah,
Smokey Smith, who was Canada's last living Victoria Cross holder when he died in 2005, said about Ortona in an interview a few years before he died, quote, "It was a terrible place. You know it. It was practically door to door," end quote. For miles, they had everything close together, so we'd blow holes through the wall so we could go through that way. Because if you walk out into the street, they'd get you, end quote. But this is probably a good place to pause for our first fantasy sponsor for this special Christmas episode. This episode of the Rum Ration is brought to you by Mouse Hole Amaro.
Aha! The only drink designed for those moments when walking down the street is a terrible tactical idea.
At Ortona, the Canadians invented mouse holding to stay out of the kill zones. With Mouse Hole Amaro, you can stay out of the tourist zones and head straight for the nearest side door.
Notes of burnt plaster, cordite, and we really didn't brief this, did we? Best served in a chipped enamel mug in a room you just blew your way into.
Mouse Hole Amaro. Why go through the front door when you can go through the load-bearing wall instead?
Excellent. Well done on that one. Well, going back to what Smokey said, I think he pretty much summed up the need for the tactical innovations perfectly. But even with mouse holing, the battle was a nightmare. Charles Comfort, the war artist, described it as a medieval battle in its close-quarter violence, groping through suffocating dust and smoke, stumbling over upturned furniture and debris, struggling breathlessly in nightmare, darkness, felling, clubbing, blasting, shooting it out. I mean, all those words are so evocative and terrifying when you think about it. Just
very hand to hand.
Very hand to hand, yes.
Very intimate, I suppose. By December 23rd, the Loyal Eddies were stalled at the Piazza Municipale, it's municipal square. Part of the Germans' main defensive area. So the Germans had tanks hidden in bombed-out houses. Yeah, they would actually, that's a smart way to do it. Get the tank in position and just kind of collapse the tank on top of it. You'd never know there's a tank in there.
Yep.
They had mutually supporting machine gun positions, and they had booby traps everywhere. One Loyal Eddy NCO, this guy was quite a machine, Private Charles Gordon Rattray, achieved the extraordinary by crawling through rubble to staining snipers to capture 5 paratroopers. And these weren't like your typical wimps. He captured 5
No,
paratroopers and
no.
brought in 3 German machine guns that were anchoring the enemy's position. Rattray he was awarded the DCM, the Distinguished Conduct Medal, for his brave actions that day.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding. German
Yeah,
paratroopers, like paratroopers in almost every
they don't typically give up easily.
army in that day, they really were elite. So taking 5 prisoner is a huge thing. Nevertheless, they're paratroopers. They're tenacious. They were
Mhm.
tasked with holding Ortona. They just kept on going. The Canadian casualty rate was incredibly high, especially among officers and senior NCOs who had exposed themselves to lead their troops. Same old story. They try and take out the leaders on the ground, hoping that that would stall momentum.
Yeah,
Uh,
getting up and waving your hand and blowing a whistle and getting other troops to it's bad for your health.
Look, I'm saying it's over there, over there. You know, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, sir. This really was, however, a platoon commander's battle, wasn't it? It
Yeah.
relied on junior leadership to maintain morale and momentum in the chaotic environment. And again, you know, maybe we are a little bit biased, but I think Canadian troops excel at that, especially in the field. You know, the junior leadership, we have strong, touchwood junior leadership,
Yeah.
and they handle those situations quite well. I'd say magnificently in some
Yeah, the
cases.
Germans were no slouches themselves, and they were merciless. They used vindictive tactics on Christmas Eve, December 24th. They initiated
Vindictive, yes.
they initiated a. Well, I mean, it's war. They weren't playing.
Yes.
They weren't playing Scrabble, right?
That's right.
They initiated a massive explosion. After Canadians had occupied a building, the German engineers remotely detonated explosives, collapsing the structure of the entire building onto the Canadian troops inside. Smart.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
smart,
Yes.
clever. This happened to a section of Seaforths also at Dead Horse Square. Lovely
Yep.
name. I'm sure it was named by the combatants, not by the inhabitants.
No, but
And in a separate incident, the Loyal Edmonton Regiment soldiers discovered the horror after a building collapsed. Lance Corporal Rob Boyd was eventually pulled out alive after being pinned in the ruins for 3.5 days. Man, oh man. That's
can you
not much
imagine?
fun. No.
No, it's not so much fun at all. And to make matters even worse, the Germans were reinforced right before Christmas Day. Talk about getting a Christmas present. They actually got one. And the Canadians, already exhausted and under strength, suddenly faced an entirely fresh German unit, the 2nd Battalion, 4th Regiment, designed to hold the line.
Wow. So the Canadians weren't reinforced. They're still the same guys who'd gone in 5 days
Nope.
earlier. So they're
Nope.
wiped out,
Nope.
tired, and
Yep.
they're facing fresh troops now. Wow.
Yes.
But we mustn't forget the other folks who were around, the civilians, the
Yes, that's right.
Ortonesi, who were trapped in the city. They were hiding in basements and cellars, often without food or water, hoping the storm would pass. Encounters were frequent. War correspondent Christopher Buckley described meeting Canadian soldiers surrounded by old men and children innumerable in a half-darkened room.
Yeah, it must have been an incredible experience. He noted how an old woman served Marsala wine to the troops, and children clutched convulsively at the Canadians every time an anti-tank gun fired nearby. This juxtaposition of life, death, and human connection in the rubble sums up the unique nature of this fight. It's just very difficult to imagine there, you know, what the soldiers must have been feeling as well when they see these civilians around them, trapped, scared, terrified. Tragically, over 1,300 civilians were killed throughout the battle. And that's a casualty rate, Colin, that's higher than the Canadian military losses in the town, if you can believe that.
God, yeah. We forget about these military histories. We focus on the combatants, right? Sometimes we
That's right.
forget. Oftentimes we forget the real impact on the civilians.
That's
This
right.
was someone's home. Ortona was someone's neighborhood, someone's place of residence, their church, their school, everything. And then suddenly the Canadians came to visit and the Germans didn't want to let go. And
Yeah.
the place
that's
just
right.
got completely destroyed, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, Rico, that grim note is as good as any to remind our listeners that the Rum Ration podcast is also unofficially fueled by Adriatic Coast Grappa.
Indeed, for those nights on the Italian coast when it's cold, wet, and the only thing between you and complete despair is extremely questionable distilled grape juice.
Our friends on the Adriatic in 1943 didn't have much in the way of creature comforts, but if they could have gotten their hands on the stuff, they'd have forgotten about their boots filling with Moro River mud.
Smooth on the palate, harsh on your life choices. Pairs beautifully with canned rations, 8 days of urban combat, and the phrase, "We push it first light."
Yeah. Adriatic Coast Grappa, warming Canadians at the front and guaranteeing at least one regrettable song on the march back.
No, that has to be there. That has to be there. Um, so the intensity of the fighting meant that Christmas Day, December 25th, 1943, looked like it would be just another day of combat. However, one audacious act changed that, at least temporarily, for the Seaforth Highlanders.
That's right. The Seaforth quartermaster, Captain D.B. Cameron, decided that a small thing like a frenzied battle shouldn't stop Christmas dinner. So he went to see the commanding officer to secure permission. And thus, with authorization from Lieutenant Colonel Sid Thompson, Cameron and his staff went scavenging for food and supplies across the countryside, putting together an impossible feast. And I think most civilian listeners may have a slightly different interpretation of the word scavenge than anyone with familiarity with the military. Basically, saying we were scavenging is trying to get out of any court-martial for stealing everything that was not bolted down that you couldn't get the bolt cutters out in time for. Imagine locusts going through a field. That is what when quartermaster troops and NCOs are going scavenging.
Exactly. And of course, another legal term for it is liberating.
Liberating. And typically, and just to be clear, they probably weren't taking anything from the locals because the poor old locals didn't have anything, the civilians, but they were probably cheerfully stealing from other units, particularly rear units.
Rear units. Where are those with other moccasins I brought for the victory parade? Yeah. Exactly. Oh, dear. Well, they held dinner in the bombed-out church of Santa Maria di Constantinople.
So you did a lot better at the RCMI when you were half a bottle in.
I know. I should go and grab something. Hold on. Let me give that another shot. Church of Santa Maria di Constantinople.
There you go.
There we go. Which was serving as the Seaforth Battalion headquarters just a few blocks from the front lines. The setting was complete. Got long rows of tables with white tablecloths.
I tell you, fancy.
China and even candles. I mean, that scavenging mission went really well.
That's right. And the meal was traditional and lavish by wartime standards. It had soup, roast pork with applesauce, mashed potatoes, mixed vegetables, gravy, Christmas pudding, and mince pie. And each man also received extras like candies, nuts, an orange, chocolate bars, and a bottle of beer. I mean, the CQ, the quartermaster there, he really wanted the RQ, I should say. He really went above and beyond.
Oh, incredibly so. And for those, for people today, it just may not sound like much, but when you're in the middle of combat, and intense combat like that, and you don't know if you're going to live to see the next day.
That's right.
Those little things mean a hell of a lot. There's little creature comforts there. It's the world to you. And, in keeping with tradition, the officers and senior NCOs served the enlisted men. Companies rotated out of the line in relays from 1,100 hours to 1,900 hours, allowing them a 2-hour respite from the fighting.
That's right. And Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve, who was a signal officer, and just shout out to our listener, Master Warrant Officer Sarah Anvari, who sometimes takes umbrage at the fact that we're so infantry focused and, we need to talk about the signals. So here we are, Sarah. Thank you for your feedback. And here we've got Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve, signal officer. He played Christmas carols on the church organ, aided by a choir organized by Padre Major Roy Durnford. And the regiment's war diary noted the, quote, atmosphere of cheer and good fellowship, end quote, and the rewarding sight of the, quote, dirty bearded men, end quote, entering the church.
What? They didn't shave?
But it was Christmas. The RSM with me a little bit. I like your instincts, though. You can tell you've been engaged now.
Immediately. Like, what is that? But, if you're going to have an officer play Christmas carols on the church organ, what better name than Gildersleeve?
I tell you.
I think
doesn't get better than that.
Doesn't get better. I think that's perfect. Problem was, the war was always present.
Ah, yes, that part.
Yeah. Padre Durnford wrote in his diary that beyond the church walls, he could hear the deathly chatter of machine guns and the rumbling of falling buildings. Some loyal eddies could not rotate out. Yes.
I think he's just figured out that he hadn't been invited for that Christmas dinner. And that there are such things as on the menu for Christmas dinner as a roast pork with applesauce, as opposed to the goose that you're constantly doing. I know you think goose is pretty cool, but I think he would prefer roast pork.
He is quite partial to a bit of roast pork and with a little bit of applesauce. So, especially if it's served on white tablecloths with
Naturally.
china and lit candles in the middle of a war zone. Um, so, uh, some loyal eddies sadly could not rotate out and received only a cold pork chop brought forward by a Bren gun carrier. Uh, although, I suppose in that situation, you're grateful for
Anything.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Others like but although, I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, obviously. Others like Private Ernest Smoky Smith, who we referenced earlier on, refused to let their section go, correctly
Hmm.
fearing casualties on the way to and from dinner. Smith was no fool. He was a seasoned veteran, and he'd already earned the Victoria Cross for his actions in Italy just 2 months earlier. So he knew
Yeah.
the inherent dangers of exiting a frontline position to
That's
go
right.
back for a 2-hour meal. And then, even if you make it back, are you going to be able to come back to your position? Because the Germans, they're not taking a break. So,
No, they're not taking a break, and it's a very good point, Rejoy, because you've got to extricate yourself. You're exposing yourself, even taking all the chances you can, or all the all the appropriate covers you can. You're still putting yourself at risk by moving,
yeah.
and you're going to make noise. You're going to be, and these front sections were in combat. They're exchanging fire
Yeah, that's right.
with the Germans constantly. So that's why you couldn't pull out the front sections, but. Think about it. You bring some poor soldier back. He manages to get back. He relaxes. He can finally, let his shoulders down for a bit. He hasn't slept probably in a couple of days.
Yeah,
He
that's right.
hasn't
Yeah.
eaten properly. So now you feed him up with a nice, good Christmas dinner like that. He's all happy. You give him a couple of beers, like they're saying,
Yeah.
and you
Bottle of beer.
toddle him off back towards the front line. Well, do you think he's going to be tucked down? Do you think he's going to be as dialed in and as wired tight as he should be? He might step out and make some mistakes. So you can understand why a guy like Smokey said, "Sorry, boys, no one's going for dinner."
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. But here's a contrast we also must emphasize, a German perspective. Can't forget them. And a German sergeant major, who was an infantryman in that battle, was close enough to hear the organ playing carols amidst the cold and rain. And he later confessed, quote, "I don't think we're going to beat these guys. They're pulling a stunt like that," end quote. So to the Germans who were fighting, and these were the
Yeah.
fresh Germans,
Yes.
by the
Yes.
way. They'd only
Yes.
been in the line for not even a day. And
Yes.
they were fighting these exhausted Canadians like, wait, are they playing fucking Christmas carols?
I don't know, Ernst. I think he is enjoying himself.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're having too much fun.
This is not a good sign. It's pretty bad. And so again, little things like that. I mean, I suppose you don't think about it. The guy who's playing the organ, it's for our guys.
Yeah.
Cheer them up, a little bit of a morale booster. But of course, as to your point earlier on, take into account how the enemy are thinking, and for them, they must be thinking that exactly what Newton is saying.
Mm-hmm.
This is terrible. This is terrible. These guys are not demoralized at all. So the tenacity of the Canadians, their ability to pause the fighting for a proper Christmas ceremony and then immediately return to battle, that finally cracked the German will. That same day, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, who was in charge of the German defense of Ortona,
Smiling Albert.
and smiling Albert indeed, wasn't smiling that day, realizing the immense cost, initiated planning for the withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Because he thought, okay, forget it. There's no point.
No. And let's take another quick commercial break and remind our loyal listeners that this Ortona Christmas special is brought to you by Saturnalia Spiced Vermouth.
Ooh, inspired by the ancient Roman festival where for one day the social order flips and the bosses serve the troops. Sound familiar, Seaforths?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And in 1943, it was the officers and senior NCOs dishing out pork and pudding in a ruined church. Today, it's your CO awkwardly ladling gravy and pretending that he loves KP.
Saturnalia Spiced Vermouth comes preloaded with hints of orange peel, cloves, and mild resentment that this ancient tradition only seems to go one way.
That's right. Serve it neat or mix it into a Christmas cocktail while your subaltern carries the dishes.
Saturnalia Spiced Vermouth, honoring the day the chain of command politely steps aside and hands you the ladle.
Look at that.
Oh,
The Canadians
so nice.
continued to press hard on December 26th and 27th, supported by the terrifyingly destructive anti-tank guns and the Sherman tanks.
Yeah.
They applied converging pressure on the German defensive line.
On the night of December 27th, the Germans, having initiated a deception plan to cover their movements, quietly withdrew from Ortona. The fierce 8-day battle ended when Canadian patrols, led by Loyal Eddies Lieutenant Alan Johnson, discovered the Germans were gone on the morning of December 28th.
we talk a lot about the bravery and people attacking and jumping into a trench and bayoneting
Yeah.
some guy and all that. But you imagine the fear of these guys who were doing that early dawn
Yeah.
patrol,
Yeah.
they're advancing to contact, right? To
Yes.
find the
Yes, that's right.
Germans. And
Yes.
then,
Yes.
yes, it's good news that they didn't find anything, but how terrified they must have been the whole time waiting to get shot.
Yes. And especially,
Oof.
the nature of that battle. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Booby
what you're up
traps
against.
everywhere, and
Mhm.
you don't know what's going to go on. Yeah. But the
Yeah.
cost
Yeah.
was catastrophic. The fighting around Ortona and the Moro River earned December 1943 for the Canadians the name Bloody December.
Yeah.
More than
Yeah.
2,600 Canadian soldiers were casualties in Italy that month, with over 500 killed. Seaforths and Loyal Edmonton, they suffered immense losses in Ortona alone, nearly a quarter of Canada's total casualties for the entire Italian campaign. Wow.
Incredible, eh? One battle.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. And for some who attended the Christmas dinner, the tragic reality of combat returned immediately. Colin, as you noted, some soldiers who had enjoyed the brief respite were killed within hours of returning to the grim realities of the front line, exactly for the reasons that, probably what you mentioned earlier on. All of a sudden, your guard is down, you're
Yeah.
relaxed, you're not sharp anymore, you've got some alcohol in you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make a mistake. The signal officer who played the organ became part of a lasting legacy. Shout out to our Siggy friends. Hopefully that mention will get us back into Sarah and Vary's good graces.
So it's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than that. The
but
Canadian troops.
Two mentions of signals today.
Two mentions signals. Yeah.
Two.
We haven't even
There you
mentioned the RMR once today. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Awesome. Now we're out of her good graces.
that's it. Lost
Yeah.
it.
The Canadian troops and their supporting units demonstrated prodigious skill, ingenuity,
Yeah.
excellent leadership, and exceptional courage to defeat the elite German 1st Parachute Division. And as one veteran put it, if we could beat the best of the German army, we were pretty good.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Colin, because these guys were really damn good. They were the ones who took the fortress in Belgium, Eben-Emael. They were the inspiration for the British paratroopers. When Churchill saw what they did, he said, we got to have troops
Exactly.
like that as well.
Yeah.
They played a pivotal role in the taking of Crete
Of course.
and Greece. So they are, they're the best of the best. And the Canadians handled them in Ortona.
That's right.
So beyond the military victory, an enduring consequence was the relationship with the Ortonesi. After the battle ended, the Canadians remained in the ruins for months, helping the civilians recover. They cleared rubble, buried the dead, including hundreds of civilians, shared rations, provided medical aid, helped rebuild. And I can understand, the emotional connection to that town, especially when
Absolutely.
you're, huddling in bombed out shelters with those kids.
Those poor
who
scared,
are
poor
clutching at
scared
you,
kids.
Yeah. You feel attachment.
That 1944 Ortona Dinner was an example of the importance of custom, ritual, and traditions. And Christmas dinner is an enduring tradition today, even across the Canadian Armed Forces. To this day, officers and senior NCOs in many regiments and units serve the troops their Christmas dinner, although I think we call it holiday dinner now.
Yeah.
Which holiday? Oh, it must be Saturnalia. Often gathering afterwards to sing carols. And Captain Cameron, the quartermaster, was invested as a member of the Order of the British Empire.
Yeah.
He got the MBE for his initiative to get the fighting troops in Ortona a traditional Christmas dinner. To be fair, though, if he hadn't been awarded that, as a good, quartermaster, he probably would have just stolen one. He's probably embarrassed. He's like, oh, I've already got one.
I'll trade you the military medal I got over here. So Ortona stands out in our memories today, not because of its strategic value, but because of the fierce fighting and the tremendous heart shown by the troops. I mean, there's a reason they call it Little Stalingrad. That was the intensity of the battle. The ingenious tactics they developed, like mouse holing, became standard doctrine, like you said, Colin. It's used today, influencing urban combat techniques for years and years to come. The battle is formally recognized as a national historic event of Canada.
That's right. It truly exemplifies the stories that we'd love to tell on the Rum Ration podcast. Ordinary Canadian volunteers, many in their 20s, facing highly trained, determined German paratroopers, also in their 20s, and through the sheer ingenuity and courage, triumphing, but at a terrible permanent cost. Do you know that song Downtown by, oh my God, it came from the
60s
When
song?
You're Alone.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Yeah.
So when I was in Gagetown, I think on phase 4, we were doing a lecture on phase 4, or on Fibula, fighting in built up areas. And one of the course officers showed us a film, and it was basically set in World War II about the kind of fighting at Ortona and other places. And they overplayed that song in the background. When you're alone and got nothing downtown, they're mouse holing, blowing up buildings. They're all collapsing rubble. Pretty hilarious. Yeah,
it kind of makes the point quite well, I think.
It's touching. I'll try and find it for this episode.
Well, we should do that. Well, it's important to end our story with a subtle piece of nuance regarding the famous photograph often associated with the Ortona Dinner, because people see that photograph and that is that enduring image of Ortona for people who are familiar with it, right?
That's right. And this point that's coming up, I explained this to my nephew and his lovely lady, and they both feigned interest and tried to pretend that they knew which image I was talking about. As I, lectured them about how it wasn't the real thing. So
did the Navy know about Ortona? I mean, to be fair,
it's on the coast. It's on the coast.
Something's over there. Yeah.
Can be a port. But if you Google the Ortona Dinner, you'll immediately see a black and white photo of clean-shaven men sitting at tables. And for decades, this image was believed to be the Seaforths in the church. But we'd already mentioned those dirty, bearded bastards coming in to eat, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. You also disabused me of that notion.
I like to do that.
But yes, Newton agrees with you.
He does too.
He does too.
No, he's a believer. He's convinced.
However, later historical analysis revealed that this photograph, along with associated images from the same roll of film, was actually taken at the headquarters of the 1st Canadian Armored Brigade in San Vito Cittadino, a rear area 6 kilometers away. The men pictured are mostly junior ranks from the Armored Corps and the Service Corps.
So they may have played a role, because we were talking before the CQ, or the RQ probably did steal their Christmas dinner.
That's right. And I'm sure the RSM approved that image because they were shaven. He disagrees, but there we are.
He's feisty today.
He's very feisty today. So
what did you do to offend him?
Well, he takes the Battle of Ortona very personally.
Yes.
We've been arguing from this morning about various tactical. He is German, remember. He was born in Germany, so
that explains so much. Yeah. He gets conflicted, doesn't he?
He's very conflicted, yes.
I don't think he's conflicted at all, quite frankly. I think we know which side he's on. But this doesn't diminish, the picture you're talking about, the Armored Corps and Service Corps, it doesn't diminish the event itself, but it emphasizes the truth of the Seaforths experience as documented in their war diary. The dinner was served to those dirty, bearded men who reluctantly returned to the front lines. And it happened exactly as recorded and as we explained it. But sadly, no definitive photograph exists of that moment in the Santa Maria di Costanopoli church. Not bad.
Which church was that again?
It was near Highway 16. Just off of Highway 16 as you're driving in. The only record lies in the memories and journals of those who were there.
And to be fair, I think I suppose the last thing they were thinking of was taking a photograph of the event, Whereas if you're in the rear area, then there's more than enough time to take a nice photograph. But if you're in the front lines, not so much. Ortona remains a stark reminder that Christmas, even in war, held profound moments of humanity and sacrifice. As Matthew Halton, that famous CBC reporter who was in the front lines with the Canadian troops, as he reported, the wounded refused to leave the fight, and the men didn't want to be relieved after 7 days and 7 nights of combat. They were determined to carry on.
That's impressive. The Canadians' victory at Ortona, won room by agonizing room against an implacable foe, solidified their reputation as one of the finest divisions in the Allied forces.
Yeah, indeed. And to understand the extreme difficulty of achieving that moment of Christmas cheer. Yes, imagine fighting a relentless 3-dimensional chess match in a house rigged with explosives, with the enemy sometimes just on the other side of a wall you just blew a hole through. That fleeting moment of a hot meal and carols in a bombed-out church was the ultimate demonstration of resilience, a true act of defiance against the chaos of war.
I agree. Nothing says Merry Christmas like blowing a mouse hole and chucking in a couple of grenades.
Exactly.
Merry Christmas coming in to further express the good wishes.
Yes, of the season.
Of the season. So finally, as we wrap up this episode about dirty bearded men, we'd like to
Mhm.
acknowledge that this episode is lion-heartedly supported by Lionheart's Limoncello.
Indeed, the official digestive of junior leaders who are tired of hearing about lions led by donkeys.
That's right. At Ortona, it was section commanders, platoon commanders, and NCOs making decisions room by room, house by house. If that's not lion-hearted, I don't know what is.
Yeah, lion-hearted limoncello is best enjoyed after a long day of improvising technical doctrine on the fly and pretending you're not absolutely terrified.
Bright, sharp, and just a little dangerous if you overdo it. Much like the best young leaders.
Indeed, indeed. Lionheart's limoncello. Raise a glass to the platoon commander's battle and to the Canadians who proved they could beat the best.
From all of us at Rum Ration Podcast, thank you for joining us for this special Christmas episode. We wish you peace this holiday season. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, all.
Cheers to history.